Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Paul, for asking me to share the webinar. I'm really pleased that there are so many. There are 79 of you apparently at the moment, and I really hope that we're able to get you into Twitter. I'm going to show you more about what to tweet, which is obviously going to be based on what I tweet and how I use Twitter, which will probably be fairly different from many of you. It's pitched very deliberately at a basic level, and we've assumed that you're either not on Twitter at the moment but would like to be, or that you're there but you're only using it fitfully. Just a little introduction in terms of me. I've been using social media for quite some time, starting back in 2006 when I discovered the very addictive Mumsnet, which I found through work rather than in a personal capacity. Then I set out to explore Facebook for the same reasons. A couple of years later, swiftly followed by LinkedIn. I also have a blog, although I haven't quite yet worked out what to do with it or how I'm actually going to find the time to write it. So, when it comes to Twitter, I joined Twitter in 2009 and I've been a very avid user of it ever since. And what you can see on the screen here are bios of two of my accounts, as you would see them if you were in TweetDeck, one of the clients that Paul referred to. I actually have three accounts, one in my own name, one in the company name, and a third one which is strictly unprofessional, for which I use a pseudonym. And I'm not going to tell you what that is. But the point about having the three accounts means that I can keep my personal life and any personal tweets that I make separate from anything I want to tweet about me as a researcher or as managing director of Frontline. And that's important when it comes to why you want to be on Twitter. So this chart is my Twitter. This is the home page. Paul showed you his home page. This is my Alison Starr account. I currently have 440 followers on this one. I follow 336. That kind of reflects the fact that I don't really use this account that much. My personal account, the one I have in a pseudonym, I have 760 followers and I follow 766 people, which is a better balance, exactly as Paul was saying. So this first page here, the red arrow is showing you where to start with your first tweet. You would just simply type into that box. And on the right-hand side is the Twitter stream or your timeline, and I've referred to it through this presentation as my timeline. That will show you all the tweets that have been made by all the people that you follow, and it updates itself in real time. Personally, I prefer to use TweetDeck, and this is what my home page looks like on TweetDeck. The red arrow again, that shows you where you would compose your tweet. It's exactly the same. You have 140 characters. You just type it in the top box there. To confuse matters, though, I use Twitter on my iPhone and also on my iPad, but it's different on both of those. So you do have to get used to using different interfaces and different ways to Twitter. So, having said that, let's have a look at what Twitter is all about. Or I would, if I could find the arrows at the bottom of the chart. Ah, there we go. On my timeline today, just to give you an idea, this is actually a few days ago now, but what you'll see at anybody's timeline is that people talk about anything and everything. It doesn't really matter who you follow, it will always be the same. But the more people that you follow, the more diverse and therefore the more interesting your timeline will become. The people that you follow will also be replying to other people, so you will see lots of different conversations going on, and that's important because that gives you more opportunities for interacting with joining in the conversation, and therefore also more opportunities to follow more people. One of the reasons that I really like Twitter is that it's like being in the best pub in the world. Everyone's welcome, there are 1,000,001 different conversations going on in there, and you can join in with any of them. And what you'll find will happen is you'll start off by talking with your mates, and then they'll introduce you to their mates, and then suddenly you have a whole new crowd of people that you can engage with. And as far as I'm concerned, that's really the key to Twitter, is engaging and interacting with other people. If all that you're using Twitter for is composing updates about you and what you're doing, then you will find that it's a fairly unsatisfactory process. The more you tweet, it's now a proven fact, you can have a look at this link later on, the more followers you will attract. The more followers you have means you'll have more opportunities to interact. But quantity isn't necessarily quality. Just because you've got lots of followers doesn't mean that you'll have a great Twitter experience, because a lot of your followers will be random, as Paul demonstrated with the rather dubious lady who was following him. You'll find that depending on what you tweet, you will attract certain followers. A lot of companies use spam bots, trawling the net looking for mentions of their name. For example, I'm being followed by someone called @UtilitiesSaversGS, presumably because at one point in time recently I was raging about British Gas when my boiler failed. I don't really think that @UtilitiesGS is particularly interested in me, my tweets, or commissioning me to do some market research, so I'm not really bothered about engaging with them. So to make Twitter most effective, you need to try and make sure that you're following and being followed by relevant people. So, what should I tweet? Let's assume that you've joined up and you've chosen your username. And one top tip here is to make sure that your username is as short and pithy as possible, because your 140 characters that you're allowed to use also includes your username. So the longer your username, the fewer characters you have for your tweet. So here we are, we've got our Twitter homepage. What are we going to tweet? Well, it really depends on why you're on Twitter in the first place. Are you there for fun? Are you there for business? The best thing really, whether it's for fun or for business, it's the same principle. Tweet about the things that are going to interest you. People will find you. They'll find you from your profile, they'll find you from the various mechanisms that Paul showed you. But if you put things in your bio that are particularly relevant to you, and you make it clear in your tweets what you're interested in, you're much more likely to generate a response from other people, and you're much more likely to therefore initiate a conversation, which means you'll attract new followers, which then means your Twitter experience will be much more enjoyable. However, if you're tweeting in your professional capacity, so me as at Alison Starr or at Frontline Qual, you do need to think very carefully what you're tweeting, because it is your professional image or your company or corporate USP and positioning that you're representing on Twitter. So here you might want to talk about things that are strictly relevant just to your business and not to what you're watching on telly tonight or what you're having for dinner later on. You want to make sure that you're presenting yourself in a way that will reflect the right kind of image that you want to portray. So use it as a way to position yourself as an expert in your field. So tweet links to relevant news articles or your website or papers that you've presented and attended and so on. And here is a very good example of a corporate account. This just happens to be the Financial Times. What they're tweeting in their timeline are stories about financial news, world issues, and they're putting links in there to the FT as well as other news stories so that people can access news from them. If you're new to Twitter, you might actually wonder how people find the time to tweet. And again, it comes back to how you're using Twitter. Personally, I rarely use it for business because it takes time. I want to make sure that I'm projecting the right image about myself, or about Frontline. And so I need to think about what I'm tweeting. I need to find content through links or different websites that I want to tweet about. But if I'm lounging around on the sofa tweeting whilst I'm watching telly, it's a completely different proposition. It's much easier to join in the banter and the fun if you don't have to think about everything that you're tweeting. Friday and Saturday night drunk tweeting can be hilarious, but clearly it's not exactly something I want Alison Starr or Frontline Qual to be doing, hence the reason for my third private account. So getting started. You've decided why you're there, it's for you or it's for your business, but how do you get started? What do you start to talk about? Twitter's advice through their help center, which is really useful, there's a lot of important information on there, their advice is to retweet, reply and react. So in other words, it's not just as simple as composing your first tweet. But you do need to think about composing your first tweet. And the best advice I can give you here is Twitter isn't Facebook, and try to avoid tweeting your status update. Most people, to be fair, do start this way. And you'll see a lot of tweets like this. I am eating a yogurt. It's one of the reasons why people don't get Twitter, because they think, why on earth would I be interested in that? And in fact, I posted a link today on Twitter about some recent research that says this kind of tweet is one of the most hated that people see. If you happen to be following me and you see that I've tweeted, I am eating a yogurt, it's not really the most exciting thing in the world, and it's not going to get a conversation going. So try and avoid tweeting like that. Try to make your tweets a little bit more informative and something that people could do something with. Make them more engaging, talk about news stories, or put some information on there that your followers might find useful or exciting or funny. Are your tweets being censored with a link to a news story reflect something that's going on at the moment about how Twitter will operate, or how Twitter's talking about operating in different countries around the world? People tweet about weather conditions in their local area, or if there's a traffic jam, all of which is quite interesting. It's giving people something, and it can encourage people to follow you in turn. Something else that's very popular is to share photos and videos. And if you go back to the home page and the composing a tweet box, once you've opened it, you'll see at the bottom there's a camera icon. If you click on that, you can download photos to share with everyone else. People do this a lot. Beautiful landscapes, sightings of the International Space Station, screenshots of funny iPhone autocorrects, and so on and so forth. And this is Sylvester, who's saying hello to everybody here. Doesn't really matter what you're sharing, but it's another way to encourage interaction and to create a conversation. Twitter is also great as a way of asking for help, and here's one of our ICGs asking for some help here as a way of stopping mail order firms sending him brochures. The more followers you have, the more chance you'll have of actually getting an answer and finding a solution to your problem. But as a very good example, I posted a question about my iPhone the other day at 10:53 a.m. By 10:56 I'd had 2 replies, both of them with the information I needed. Linked to this is customer service, and what you'll find more and more often is that big companies are on Twitter monitoring for mentions of themselves, and in particular to try and deal with issues that their customers might have. And this one is taken from this morning, someone tweeting about a problem with Marks and Spencer's, and they responded pretty quickly in terms of something that they would ask the customer to do. It's a great way to talk to businesses more directly and more speedily than trying to find a customer service number and trying to ring them up. So that's dealing with how to compose a tweet. How do we deal with the next bit, which is replying? To reply to a tweet, you just click on the poster's name and it will automatically in your compose box put their Twitter name, and you can then type a reply. If you want to do it manually, you can do. You just start it with the ampersand and follow it by their Twitter name. The key thing on Twitter though is don't wait to be asked to join in a conversation. Twitter doesn't work like that. You can join in with anybody's conversation. You might feel a bit more comfortable to start with talking to your own followers, but you don't need to worry about joining in any conversation. I'm assuming that you're not being discourteous or rude. It's part of Twitter life to just jump into a conversation. You can reply to anybody, as you can see here. Now, I've replied to the Prime Minister. I'm assuming, of course, it was Dave who was talking to me. Don't necessarily expect, though, that you'll get a reply, especially from higher profile tweets or Twitter people. Celebrities will very rarely reply to you, to be quite honest, so it's not really worth following them. Most people jump onto Twitter and start following as many celebrities as they can. Frankly, you get very little back from them. But when someone does reply to you, this is a chance for you to start to build your voice, as Twitter would say, because your reply will be seen by all the followers of the person to whom you have replied. So they in turn might then reply to what you have said. And often you'll find that several people will join in with the same conversation. You can reply to the person who started the conversation, you can pick out any one of them, or you can reply to all of them at the same time. And it's a great way to gain new followers and for you to find new people to follow. As well as replies, you'll also come across the terminology mention, and Paul used the word earlier as well. As well as replying to people, you can create a conversation by mentioning people. Twitter has a separate tab to show you the times you've been mentioned, and in TweetDeck these appear as a separate column. When anyone replies to you, your Twitter name will be shown in their tweet, so you've been mentioned. But people might also tweet about you, which also qualifies as a mention. So replies and mentions will show up in the same column, but they're not necessarily the same thing. And on the screen here you can see an example of where I've mentioned the ICG and Kindle research. One of the things that people often find with Twitter when they first join it is that it can seem a little bit one-sided. And unless you're sitting and watching your timeline all day, don't try and do it. You can't always see the whole conversation. But there are two ways to read a conversation, and you can see on the screen here two options to either click open or click in reply to, and that will show you the tweet in relation to your tweet, so you can see the whole conversation. Gives you an opportunity to see much more of what's going on. Then we go to retweeting. A retweet is using someone else's post to create a tweet in your name. So in other words, you don't always have to compose something original. It's a bit easier than having to think up something yourself. A retweet also encourages people to reply to you, and they may in turn retweet your retweet. So if you see something particularly interesting or funny, then retweet it to your followers. And using twitter.com, this is how you retweet. You hover your cursor over the tweet, and then you'll see the options in red showing at the top of the post. So you click on the retweet button, it'll automatically open up a box and it will retweet it for you. It will be prefaced by the initials RT and the Twitter name of the person who posted the initial tweet. This means that they get credit for the original tweet. It's bad Twitter etiquette to simply cut and paste without giving credit to the person who did it. So don't delete that. It's important that they get the credit. It also means that their name gets tweeted further around Twitter for more people to see them and have the chance to follow them. You can also, if you want to, send direct messages to people, and this is a useful tool to engage further with people, to get to know them a little bit better. It's a way to send a private message, but you can only send a direct message to someone who follows you. And this is a way, I think, of stopping people like Stephen Fry being inundated with direct messages to him. So you can see if you highlight your follower's icon, and here I've chosen the ICG, you get a drop-down menu and you have the option there to send a direct message to that person. Then on to hashtags, and I apologize for confusing everybody in the e-group yesterday by mentioning hashtags. Hashtags are a very useful thing, but they are confusing because they're used in several different ways. Their original purpose was a way of grouping subjects that lots of people might be tweeting about. So if you're tweeting about something very popular or particularly topical, or a subject that you know other people are involved in, then use a hashtag on the end of your tweet. Lots of TV programs now have a hashtag, and they'll publicise these before a show. So for example, BBC's Question Time uses the hashtag #BBCQT, and they'll announce that before the programme. What that means is that you can tweet a question to them and put the hashtag at the end, and they'll be able to see all of those tweets in a list, and they can choose or not to respond to your question. But you can search a particular hashtag on any of the Twitter clients and read all of the tweets about that subject in one place. It's a really good way of sharing events on Twitter. So for example, there is a hashtag London Olympics, where tweets about the Olympics will all be grouped. If you're watching a very popular TV show, for example, there is also hashtag Downton Abbey or hashtag The Apprentice, so you can talk to people about the show. And what you'll find is that brings you into contact with a load of other people that you don't follow, to give you an opportunity to talk to them and follow them if you want to. But the hashtag is also become part of the Twitter vernacular, if you like, and you'll see a lot of tweets like this where a very odd expression is used at the end of somebody's tweet. It's a way of making your tweet a little bit more engaging, adding a little bit more humour, for example. So if I went back to my very bland original tweet, I am eating a yogurt, if I create a hashtag goodness this diet is ill, it adds just a little bit more humour. Not much, I admit, but it does add a little bit more, and it gives people something more about you, more reason to talk to you, more reason to respond. And sometimes what you'll find is that the hashtag gets taken up and used by other people in their conversation as well, and it becomes just a way that you can engage with people. One word of advice, just notice that the hashtag is always typed as one word and you can't punctuate them. The other way that you'll see hashtags used are what's called Follow Friday or hashtag FF. And every Friday people take the opportunity to recommend some, any or all of the people that they're following to the rest of Twitter. So they'll preface their Twitter name with the hashtag FF, or tweet a lot of different Twitter names and then follow it with the hashtag. Again, it's another way to get more followers, and it's also a very good way to say something about the people that you're recommending. So here, for example, from the wonderfully named Saggy Daddy, he's recommending that we follow a whole load more people, but also saying why he thinks that they should be followed. It's a way of acknowledging the contribution that people have made or why they like following these people, and it helps to deepen the relationship that you might have with people on Twitter. So that was a very quick whistle-stop tour of Twitter. It's huge fun. Certainly from my own perspective, I find it very engaging. I find it often very funny. It's very informative. News stories break on Twitter faster than they do on news sites. But if you don't join in, you'll never really get it. And all you'll see is what seem like a lot of random and fairly pointless tweets. So regardless of what you want to do it for, just jump in and just start tweeting. And the best thing to do is to make sure you're following at the ICG, at Kindle Research, at Alison Starr, and come and tweet to us this afternoon using the hashtag @ICGTB. So thank you for listening and good tweeting.